immediate challenge is what do we do about the stakeholders' priorities. So, government, the customer side of it is inflexible. They just learn to live with it. And, Mr. Jahangir is here, State Bank. It says State Bank is a monopoly. They provide the services in terms of regulatory, in terms of currency notes, in terms of price bonds and everything. So there are no competition. There's no competition. But a customer side is always there, which is in form of us. If we don't get good service, we are covered. Then there are these other things, like in Pakistan, we have huge organizations. Pakistan Steel, Pakistan International Airlines, and all. They are in public sector, and there is a problem of managing and restructuring them because of the other priorities. Now we come to today's subject. I would like to take I'd like to take a perspective from each of the panelists, and let me start. I think, Asma, you are an interesting organization. National Bank is the largest bank in Pakistan. It employs over 15, 16,000 people. It has branches up to the grassroots level of the country, and it provides banking service which are also available by other banks. So customer has a choice. It doesn't have to bank with National Bank. So unless there is a quality of service is improved, this will not happen. And National Bank over the period has been struggling to transform its culture, its mindset. And I think I would like to learn from you, Asma, what is your take? Three things. One, where we are right now in terms of National Bank's organization, culture, structure, and transformation.
Okay. Thank you, Zafar. Thank you for inviting me today. I know you are very persistent that I must come to these sessions, and you somehow get me on board. Otherwise, I try to focus on, it's as National Bank, since I've joined a year back, it's been very hectic and very busy.
Also focus on Pakistan as well.
I will.
You're a beam of organization in Pakistan right now.
Yes. Thank you for that. Acha, may I understand the format of this session so that I know when you give me a chance to speak, how much time do I have?
You can speak about 5-10 minutes. Then I will go to other panelists, okay. And then we will take up some general questions that might come here on chat, and we may even open the mics for
all right, got it. Thanks. It's a very interesting topic, and the topic that you've chosen for organization transformation, and that also in public sector. It's very, very core to our organization, and we are a public sector organization. That's why. So, I'll start by saying that we are going through unprecedented disruption nowadays due to COVID-19. The whole world is going through that. So public sector is no less than private sector in these challenging times. But when we focus on specifically organizational transformation in public sector, the most important thing I feel is the one thing that has to be transformed is self. Self-transformation is the most important thing. Like, for example, if I have to assess it, if I have to answer your question, where do we stand right now? That leads to understanding the organization. So when I say self-transformation is the most important thing, what it means is that you can't just start implementing best practices from private sector and start assessing the culture of the organization with a mindset that you've come from outside private sector and start gauging the pulse of the organization from that meter. So that would definitely not be correct and not fair to the organization. So the most important thing in any organizational transformation, and so much so in public sector transformation, it's extremely important that you do self-transformation first. Understand the dynamics of the organizations first. Understand the culture. It cannot be done in a day or so. So you need to go into details. You have to understand and assess the strengths and weaknesses of the organization. Every organization has it. It's a very, I must say, when you sit from outside in view, aap jab lete public sector organization, so you feel that in public sector, nobody works. Things don't move. That's the perception that you, take from outside in view. But when you go into the organization, you have to go with an open mind that, okay, if you want to bring in some change, what do you want to do? What is the transformation? What is the definition of transformation as well? So you need to understand that first, anything that needs to be transformed is yourself. So do that, understand the dynamics of the organization, understand the culture, read the culture, understand how things are done and why they are done that way. You cannot implement any of the shelf program in public sector organization because that's totally different. So even if you have public sector experience prior to joining any public sector organization, still you need to understand that particular organization first. So once you've done that pulse check and gone into the details of how this organization works, then only you are able to implement even a minor little thing. Otherwise, you'll set up yourself for failure, and you'll also waste organization's time and resources. So the most important thing is, again, perception and positive communication. I'll go into details later, but what I want to start with is you need to understand what transformation means, what it means. Restructuring has a very negative connotation. So when people say restructuring, it says, okay, downsizing, it just suddenly leads to that. No, organizational transformation does not mean restructuring in that way. What it means, like what I understand so far, is in my 27 years of career, is that it is achieving a fundamental change in strategy, operating model, organization, and processes. So that's what I feel is very important to understand at the first stage.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Just a little bit of deliberation of 2 or 3 very important points you suggest. One is the self-transformation. So when you talk of self-transformation, who is in the self? Who is self?
It's anyone who's part
leading the transformation.
Anyone who is part of that transformation. In this case, I've joined this organization a year back. I have to do self-transformation first. I have worked in multinational organizations locally and globally. I can't just come and start implementing those best practices.
So that's
I know those are best practices. These are good practices, tried and tested, but I first need to understand this organization. This is what I'm trying to do now, for the last 1 year, that, okay, this is the organization, this is how it works. And now that I've understood, if I want to implement any best practice, how am I supposed to implement that for success? Basically, not just to change for the sake of changing would not help the organization. I need to have a proper plan. For that, I'm still going through self-transformation. Anyone in the leadership team, anyone who's part of transformation in whatever way, has to do that first, understand how we can transform ourselves first in order to transform the organization in the right way.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I think, that is very well clear now. So you're talking about before you take up the challenge of transformation, you should first understand and transform yourself to the organization, because you can't just bring in an alien thought, an alien culture, and try and fit it in an organization where dynamics are different and, there is uniqueness. And, just to suggest to you, with my graying hair, I have also learned one thing. All my life, we've been saying that best market practices, go for best market practices. Yeah. Now I have started believing that that's a misplaced notion. There is nothing like best market practice, because there could be best practices applicable to a certain organization in a certain culture. So if it has worked there, it cannot become a best market practice, because every organization is unique. So new solutions have to be found and detected in every organization. So best market practice, basically you have to, and this is where now I request all my HR professionals to please focus and come up with your own creativity and innovation for the best market practice, which you design and you implement and you make it successful, because that is going to be relevant to exactly the organization you're talking about. So Asma, that is very good point. First is self-transformation. Second is, don't just give the solution, and understanding the organization culture is very important before you actually launch transformation. Brilliant. Thank you so much. I just saw Mr. Amjad Manzoor has joined. Amjad Saab. Amjad Saab. I think he thought that maybe he just came. I saw his Anyway, so actually, I wanted to talk to State Bank first before going to Hawa because she can bring the international perspective. Uh, Amjad sir, are you there, sir? Oh, there you are.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. So this is
Walaikum.
all the dear participant. This is Mr. Amjad Manzoor. He is the executive director of State Bank of Pakistan, and you can see he is working in the office in a very formal mode. Although he has loosened his tie end of the day, that's okay. But bankers are bankers, and mashallah, leading by example. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining. I understand you had an urgent meeting, but I'm so glad you are here just in time because we started off the discussion about public sector transformation, and one of the points that I was making that every organization has to be responsive to the stakeholders, and stakeholders are the owners and customers and the employees. So now, if we're talking about the State Bank of Pakistan, it is owned by the government of Pakistan, but it is still an independent organization. It manages itself, and my own experience for the benefit of participants here is one of the best public sector organizations where the quality of human resource remains totally uncompromised. They're highly professional in their approach and very, very, very qualified people. So the question that we're trying to struggle, Amjad, do you think that there is a need for a structural transfer, for a transformation, not structural, for a transformation in a state bank in line with the customer changing market dynamics, technology, and customers' experience? And if that has to be happen, that has to happen, what will be the human resource challenge in that? So look forward to the question, sir. Over to you. We have about 5-7 minutes to give us
Yes,
some.
sir. Thank you very much, sir, for the invite, and I'm sorry for the delay in my joining. Uh, I think the transformation process is a continuous process, be it State Bank or be it any other organization. And we are very cognizant of this fact, and we are transforming ourselves. And from the customer point of view also, and from other stakeholder point of view also. And this transformation process has taken a new facet under the post-COVID era. Now we are actually using our business methods are being changed. For instance, we are now relying more on electronic means of communication, and working from home culture is, nobody had heard or thought about it before in State Bank. Now it's a norm. We are working with only 25%, 20% of salaries coming to the offices, and rest of people are working at home. So the particular HR challenges which we can envisage is that you have to first of all retrain people to work in this environment, and that also entails some certain changes in the processes also. For instance, if in public sector organization we have a culture of everything going through paper trail, because we are subject to audits and everything. So you need to have physical signatures and paperwork, and then you have to attach various supporting documents with the proposals. So that thing is to be changed. So maybe you need to change your processes as well, and plus you need to change your personnel, in the sense that the way they were working is changed. Because first, if they were producing like 30-page document for a proposal, which was attached, various papers were attached with that. Now if they want to do it on an email, probably they have to express in a different way their proposal. So that's related to the business. Plus you need to train people in the sense that they they can be they can be working at odd hours from various places also. It's not necessary that they have to come to office. So whatever information they need to work from their home, they need to have that with themselves also all the time. And Augustin is providing technological solutions, but these solutions take a long time to come into place, and especially when organization is large, infrastructure is old, you need time to upgrade. And for banks, central banks like State Bank, we have a lot of security concerns, all cyber security concerns and things like that. So Alhamdulillah, in State Bank, we have already started it. And in fact, luckily we started this online and paperless environment much before the COVID situation. We started this project two years ago, and in certain areas we are because we have a lot of dealing with our banks also, and we are we in certain areas we have already gone in a paperless environment. And the other challenge which I'm facing is that if you are dealing with your customers also, now you cannot allow everybody to come to your workplace. So how you gonna cater to their requirements also? For in this regard, like say we started it from for ourselves also, because previously in an organization you make a lot of payments to the employees also besides salary, like you reimburse various bills like traveling bills, like medical bills, things like that. So we used to give checks to them and they used to put them in the bank or take cash from the counters. So we have stopped this, and now we are asking them that the money will go to the bank. We won't give, we will not be giving issuing any instruments. So that also requires certain change in mindset. We let's not forget that in public sector organization, when we are dealing with State Bank, which is here since 1949, if we have 5,000 employees in our organization, we have about 8,000 pensioners also. And we are asking them that we'll be sending your pension directly to your bank accounts, and there is a lot of resistance. And we have getting a lot of representations also. Oh, how can we, you cannot, you are trying to, separate us from the institution. We have worked for 30 years and you don't want us to come to the institution. It was, once a month activity and we could meet people and we are telling them, okay, you can come and you can meet us, you can have a cup of tea, but please don't come to take pension. Similarly, they come to us it's a lot of representations. They have made associations and they are sending bundles of applications. It's a typed application and people are signing it. We have given them a deadline of 1st September to please open your bank account. Most of them they have bank accounts. So it's basically a mindset issue. They say that they are being deprived of an institution which they have given their youth and their whole life. So challenges are always changing. The key thing is that first of all, whatever initiative we are taking, there should be a ownership at the top level. What I think the ingredients of success are, because if things are not owned at the top level, you cannot go very far. You get stopped or you get distracted. Plus, you need to have a lot of communication. You need to explain, and also facilitate people. If there is a genuine problem, you resolve that. But if there is just a resistance for the change, you need to convince. But you have to be determined also. You need to give the impressions, okay, this is there, this is going to happen. You can accept it sooner or later, but you have to accept it. So because most of the public sector organization, they cannot go through their entire change process, but there's a lack of resolve also. They have given in the halfway because of pressure or whatever, and people don't take them seriously going forward. And for that, you need to understand, you need to formulate a team who are like effective people in the organization. Because in every organization, everybody is not that effective. So you need to understand who is in the organization and what role that person can play, and put them a vibrant and effective team and give them some authority also. And the other thing which is important is very good MIS or feedback system. In our institution, every day we make a report how many persons have come to the office premises, and is it according to the allowed strength which we have allowed. Like if we said only 100 people can attend, so if it is 1 in 10 on any given day, there is a lot of accountability and scrutiny. Why 10 people have more come over?
No, that's a good control system, Amir sir. That's a good control system. And obviously we have the technology and MIS where every person is now Even in Dubai,
Brother Zafar, we seem to have lost you.
I think there is a connectivity issue at Zafar's house. I think we lost.
I think yes, we can't listen now. By the way, how you are? How you are?
If I may ask Asma about the National Bank thing, how things are working over there?
During COVID, yeah, we're working from home. Most of us branches are open because, like you mentioned, we do have this issue of people coming because most of our customers are government employees and pensioners. So even though we've tried them, okay, well, they should come through ATMs and all of that, they like to come to branches. So we're trying to maintain as much social distancing as possible, meeting all the, taking all the precautions and safety measures. But we have to open branches. Like we can't close all of them. We have, as per State Bank's directives, we get a lot of pressure from branch staff that sab ban kar de branches. We need to close the branches because it's dangerous, it's risky. So we're trying to figure which is one in one, 100-kilometer radius, how many we can open, how many we can close down. So similar situation. And also coming back to paperless, I was always told that no, we need to have a paper trail. We can't work on email approval, can't work and all. But as soon as this COVID-19 hit us, we moved to this email system so fast that it was surprising. So we're all managing work from home. Regional offices are working from home. It's there are no obstacles, there are no time delays. It's like as if we were used to it. So that's how human, nature is basically. When you're forced to do it, you do it. Otherwise, you find excuses.
Right. Zafar Sahib is back or not?
Yeah, he's back now.
Yes, sir, he's back.
Zafar sir, your mic is mute.
Zafar's mic can't be on mute ever.
even
He would not like it.
You're absolutely right. He can never be
Well
on
said,
mute.
Asma, well said.
I was referring to the mic, not to Zafar sir.
You see what
I
happened was
thought,
that
Mr. Shahzad, he eased the mic.
there was a power shutdown, and by the time it shifted to the generator, I was lost. But sorry, I'm back now. So okay, it might happen.
Good to have you back.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just up. There were 2-3 points which were very important, which I thought we need to. One, of course, was the ongoing automation that we're talking about, and it's really amazing how technology has taken us over in the last few years in terms of digitization, in terms of capability of the technology to provide online services. So everybody is now doing online transfer, online services. So there were two aspects to that, which struck me in your presentation, Nanjasab. One was to build the capacity of the employees to operate in a digitized environment. And I think it seems like National Bank has done a good job, and you still have a challenge because this digitization, the speed with which it is going to artificial intelligence is going to be something of a lot of works and lot of things that we do are going to evidently becoming, they will become redundant. So many jobs that we are doing today, even where we think that there is a human mind application required, will be taken over by artificial intelligence. So we have to, one of the challenges that Amjad Saab mentioned was developing and building people, their capacities, their competencies for the time to come. That is something that has to be done in this transformation at a very, very fast pace. And when I'm talking about developing these competencies, I'm not only talking about the officers and senior officers, even at the very, very lower level people working, even at the cash counters or whatever the work they are doing, manual work they are doing, digital revolution is going to impact them. So they have to learn a lot of automation and things. So that's one big challenge in transformation. Lastly, Amjad Sahab, there was one more point, Amjad Sahab, that was a very important thing. While you're digitizing and you're becoming very efficient, is your customer also, learning the thing equally well? I mean, the customer, if you can bring in the state-of-the-art things, I mean, the customer is not fully geared up or fully ready to use that, so most of it will be useless, like we are. Right now, we are working on a thing which is called laptop or whatever on our table. We are hardly using about 10% of the potential of this thing, the real potential. It's grossly underutilized that we have at our table. So that is a huge challenge for organization transformation. Asma, your point was the cultural side of it that was beautifully covered. Then we talked about the operation side of it and capacity building side of it. That's very, very important. I will now like to move to Hawa. Hawa, by the way, for those who have not had the fortune of meeting yet, she is a brilliant human resource transformist, I will call. She's from South Africa. She spent her time there, and then she's in Dubai, and she's looking after South Africa and Dubai for people transformation, training, capacity building. I'm fortunate we are associated in a way. We did some programs. I think it was goal setting and performance management programs in Dubai together. We facilitated it together, and what a treat. Honestly, I used to think that I'm a good trainer until I met Hawa. Hawa, can you throw some light on your regional and South Africa? I start with the South Africa. That's more us. Already, Dubai is like a child who was born transformed.
Although I must say they're still experiencing lots of challenges, but but shukran. Thank you so much for the introduction.
That is the time. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here today. I think my panelist, Ms. Asma and Mr. Amjad, has covered quite a lot intensively in terms of what is required through these challenges. So for me, with regards to public sector and no less than the private sector ones as well, in both areas, we're all confronting the world of unprecedented disruption. We know that. Disruption in the environment, in the dangers that comes with the environment we're currently working with in COVID, the demographic, the cultural shifts, looking at rising expectations. We as the private sector always has these amazing expectations that we expect from the public sector, and people like Mr. Ahmed and Mr. Amjad and Ms. Asma has to then fulfill that as an individual need or customer need. So we know about these particular requirements from everyone, and that's where the challenges comes, is that we sometimes are not all on the same page with regards to the cultural shifts that needs to happen in organizations. So the other challenge, and of course the rapid and ceaseless technological innovation that Mr. Amjad has actually specified, because this continues, in my opinion, to actually topple familiar paradigms. And remember that mind shift that Mr. Amjad actually spoke about is how do you topple that familiar paradigm, that familiar mind shift that we have.
Ma'am.
Because that makes...
Hello.
Okay, I think we have another intruder. There we go.
I think it was a small one.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, my son just has unmuted it. I'm really sorry.
No problem.
Alhamdulillah, that's the pleasures of online, Ms. Asma. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So this makes absolutely. So this makes transformation achieving a fundamental change in the way we strategize our operating model, our organization, our people, and of course process much more imperative, much more difficult but imperative for the public sector, more than the private sector. And I think you both covered that quite well. So for me, the biggest challenges that I've seen in both South Africa, here in the UAE as well, and even of course other parts of Africa, is that the biggest thing is waning the trust. There is a trust issue. And one of the things that we need to look at is how do we become more trustable in the public sector? The other is that we all have rising expectations. How are we managing those expectations? So firstly, looking at the trust factor between the private and the public sector, the rising expectations that the individual, and like Mr. Zafar actually says, the customers, we all have these amazing rising expectations, and how is the private sector actually, or rather the public sector, meeting those expectations? Budget constraints seems to always have been a problem in South Africa, for example, for the public sector. What are we doing about utilizing the funds in a more effective manner for transformation and utilizing it instead of looking at funds for transformation as a waste of time? Like, for example, when we're going through transformation, are we utilizing the funds in training and development to get people ready for that? And when I talk ready, I'm not just talking about knowledge and skill. I see we also have Ms. Asma Umar over here as well that can also highlight the psychological implications of transformation that happens within organizations. Are we spending time, money, and effort in actually looking at that? Because that is definitely a huge concern in terms of the public sector that we actually have. Dealing with employee frustrations. If I look at going into a South African, the South African Reserve Bank, for example, one of the biggest things that we notice is that there are people that are frustrated. You go to somebody at the front desk, there's this major anger and anxiety that they're having to deal with, let alone now during COVID, but any other time. And that's not natural because they were not employed with that anger and frustration. It's happening because of what changes we are going through the transformation. And then, of course, more importantly, the opportunities and the demands that is unleashed by digitization. Those, for me, are your big concerns and challenges that we've been having in the public sector. So if I can list them again, we're looking at waning of trust. The trust issue seems to have been gone. The rising expectations of the clients and the individuals on the public sector. The budget constraints that we're having to engage. Employee frustrations that is there, and I go a step further, not just the frustrations, but there's a lot more anxiety in terms of some of the negative emotions towards the public sector of what is being delivered. And then, of course, the new opportunities and demands which is unleashed by digitization. So those for me are your 5 main areas that I think we need to focus on. But having said that, for me, on top of all of this, one of the solutions that we need to look at, and this is something that between Training Excellence in South Africa and Obrix here in Dubai, is focusing on how do we actually put people first. And there's one of the things that Mr. Ahmed, who is one of our key players here in the UAE, Mr. Ahmed Al-Shamali, always talks about, and that is putting the heart to it. So in other words, people at the heart of the public sector transformations. Have we considered what we're going to do about that? And then, of course, more importantly for me is defining and communicating the why for the transformation. Have we been able to define that bigger purpose and communicate that purpose to the rest of the people in the organization? Because transformation is not easy. It is psychologically daunting on people. And if they can understand and define that and communicate that why, and unfortunately, in fact, fortunately, I think Mr. Amjad said this very well, is that it has to start from the top down, Mr. Zafar. It cannot start from the bottom. It needs to be implemented where transformation is from the top down, where that ownership of transformation is taken by leadership. And that's the ownership. And I purely talk about ownership because if the ownership of it isn't from top down, you're going to find that communicating that and getting motivation from the rest of the people in the organization is going to be difficult. So for me, the biggest thing is putting people at the heart of the public sector transformation. And then secondly, defining and communicating the why for that particular transformation as well. Just some stats that I can share with you, for example. McKinsey's research has found that approximately 74% of private sector transformation efforts fail. And they actually failed to meet the objectives during the transformation. But also having said that, while in the public sector, the failure rate is even higher than 80%. Both sectors practice are decisive factors, often making difference between success and disappointing. And that differentiator is putting people first, putting the people at the heart of the public sector. That causes the 80% in terms of failure due to transformation, is that we don't do that. So if I can then elaborate on that a little later as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, you know, that's where I start feeling a bit inadequate on these webinars. You know, these are the things, subjects which are ocean in themselves, and they require much deeper interaction, discussion, and communication, just to make sure that sorry, just when it happens. Okay, just these interactions are important because these are not simple, superficial challenges. They're very deep-rooted challenges. So understanding them, getting a grip on them, and then finding out creative solutions ways forward. So that's a big challenge. But how in your presentation, there are 2-3 things that have opened my mind, and I'm very frankly suggesting. Well, first, I've always been focusing more on public sector transformation. But what you said is obviously the thing that has happened so fast with the digitization and COVID, the post-world, the world post-COVID, it's so fast that it's not only public sector, private sector also needs to completely revisit the drawing board in terms of their organization structure. Is this a structure that is valid? You use the term about, you know, understanding people's expectation, understanding customers change. This is another beautiful point. Fast changing customers' expectations. I mean, every time they have an issue, there is a solution. And anybody who brings the solution is the popular one. So, and then of course, I wanted to just ask one more thing from you before we move on with this interaction. In Pakistan, one of the stakeholders in the transformation process, as I was telling you in the earlier, is of course the government of Pakistan, because their objective is focused on socio-economic goals. So like employment is a key thing, and government actually wants to stay and suggest employment as a core objective. So they see that if you talk about, you know, getting into a more rational staff structure, if you start thinking about that we've got more than what we need, or we have got a different quality or talent that is needed, so there has to be some initiative to align it. And in that, obviously, government has to be, the top is government. And for government, it is not easy to take such decisions. Because right now we have a situation, they're trying to restructure PIA, and they're trying to restructure Pakistan Steel Mill. And they'll be talking about, there will be some, we'll have to lay some people off, which is unfortunate. I don't personally support it. And I think now there are people, we should work on realigning, retraining them to become more valuable and retain them in the organization. But when you take such decisions, government all of a sudden become very unpopular. There is opposition which is already ready to cut them short. And there is this resistance against any such initiative, which is right now we are experiencing. So have you seen this thing in South Africa, and how was it managed there?
Absolutely. So one thing we have to face is that restructuring and organizational change has to happen at many angles and changes. And in South Africa, yes, it does happen often. But for me, we need to look at how do we take a frank look at that organizational and cultural challenges that we are facing. You need to really outline what exactly are the challenges. And we need to look at how do you learn to build capacity long before the problem even exists. Because at the end of the day, the people that have been employed, that are there, have been employed for a particular reason. The question is, have we created an environment to actually support those people in their development within an organization? And if we got to a stage we now have to let people go, the question is how and who are we going to let go? Because if we haven't been able to develop the right skills for the future, then letting go of people is probably going to let go of the best people in our organization. And remember, the competitors out there, private sector is going to get them out.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that problem, because when you ask people voluntarily to go, only those people leave who've got a better opportunity. And the ones who do not exercise this option are the ones who do not have a market because of limited skills, right?
And that's
So
the
that's
problem that we're experiencing at
that's
the
a very
moment.
familiar issue. But I was just talking about the government's dilemma to, take charge of it and move on. I can later on share with you some other time. There have been some very good success stories in Pakistan of the large size, transformation organization banks. National Bank is one bank now which is still owned by government, but 20 years back, 5 of banks, all large banks, were owned by government. 4 of them have been privatized. They have restructured, and they have operating under a business which is yielding them profit, and they're giving dividends. National Bank is making a lot of money, but there is a lot of opportunity available to make more money with the same resources. So I will, that's a discussion. Coming back to our focus of the challenge of public sector transformation, and after all these brilliant points, I would like to ask Asma, what do you see is the way forward? In just
We've lost you. I think Zafir's frozen again, or
Yes, ma'am. We lost him again.
okay.
I think there is again change in the power source, so he has to reboot again.
Yeah.
I think one important aspect, instead of dividing organization private and public sector, one criterion could be size.
It's
If you are
also
in a
very
private
important.
sector, if you are a large size organization, then the challenges are different as compared to a
Yes.
small size organization.
Absolutely.
And plus the age of the organization, life to the organization, and you cannot blame them of not coming up to the new challenges if the management has not developed them also. So
That's right.
these are also the canvas is different. Even the
Yes.
private sector organization, you see large organizations, they have a lot of inefficiencies also. And then the other important thing I would like to add, we rightly mentioned the ownership, the top management. Top management does not include the chief executive, but it also includes the senior management also, like
Absolutely.
the corporate management team level. Because what happens whenever there is a change in the chief executive level, even the whole direction of the organization change. So
Yeah.
the chief secretary has to be cognizant of this fact that his idea or his vision is bought by the people who are at the helm of the affairs, like the group heads, like the department heads. Asma would agree with me that things really change 180-degree when there's a change in the chief executive. So that could be one of the reasons also.
Absolutely. I mean, these are the dynamics which you need to really understand, basically the size of the organization.
Yes.
At National Bank, we are, not only large in number of people, like we have 15,000 plus employees, plus the age of the organization is also, we're just 2 years younger than Pakistan. So like we completed our 70 years last year. And it's on top of that, it's a public sector organization. So we need to be very clear on what we plan to do in terms of transformation. As I mentioned earlier, what does it mean? It really we need to understand and then take very, very clear steps. So that, for any transformation, as Hava mentioned, and also Amjad, you've mentioned, okay, it has to start from the top. The top, for us, it is stakeholders, and the board are hired by our stakeholders. The board members, they have they need to understand, and they need to give a strategy to business, the overall organization, that, okay, this is what we need to do. Their ownership in any sort of change is very, very important. So in our case, that's there. All the board members are appointed by stakeholders, and they're very clear that this is an amazing institution. It's transformation doesn't mean that we have to just completely, reshape everything. No, we have to have a very proper plan. We have that plan. We have a vision that we need to transform this organization for, in terms of like digital is the way forward. We, that's the banking sector. There's no question about it, that you cannot operate without being, active in digital front. So that's the key. But what is more important, which you mentioned earlier as well, that if you're a money-making organization, and as National Bank is making money, they say, okay, then why do we have to change? If you're making money already, we're the largest bank. Why do we need to make more money? Or why do we need to make any changes? So, and we're quite, well placed. So what needs to be communicated is that even though you're the largest bank, number one bank or number two, wherever we are, it keeps on changing a year-on-year basis. The type of institution National Bank is and the type of potential we have, if we have all our, we connect all the dots and we bring all our energy there in the sense of digital transformation and all of that, and have a clear vision, and we implement all we want to do, then the second bank will be way behind us. Currently, we are neck to neck. This number two bank, or we, like all the big fives, they're competing very closely. But National Bank has a potential to be at the top, and the second in line, the runner-up, would be way behind. So that's, if we just, and also the ownership from people, starting from top and people, that if we continue to be in this mindset that, okay, we are the largest bank, we are on the top, we're making a lot of money, nothing stays forever. We need to move ahead with the time. So that's the communication that we are trying to do. Defining the why factor in public sector is not that easy, because there are many stakeholders, and also there are many who have, there are many masters for this kind of organization. So you can't have one size fit all communication plan for that. You have to be very, very careful what you're trying to communicate and what's the vision. And after that, the most important thing quickly that you need to focus on is the design. How do you implement that vision? And the third and most importantly, whichever framework you look at, it's the delivery. The delivery will build your credibility. So for the management, it is very important that, okay, they have the vision from the stakeholders, the board, you define, communicate, then make proper design, that how will you implement every step of it, clear policies, define and mobilize resources properly, be it financial resources, human resources, technology, define it properly. And then delivery has to be the next step, because that is what is going to build your credibility in everything that you try to do. And similarly, in every way, like for our management, to build credibility among the board and stakeholders, delivery matters, not just the talk. So it's a huge challenge. But again, if you communicate properly, you have a clear vision, you have a proper design, which includes all the resource mobilization in a proper way, telling people why we are doing it and how we design it and how we mobilize the resources. It's very, very important. This is linked with the successful delivery. What I've seen at National Bank so far, there's an amazing talent that we have. Okay, 10% in every organization will be against the management no matter what you do. So at National Bank, being public sector, and people are very vocal, and they have different forums, government level forums, senates, government forums, then legal forums and all of that. So they're very vocal, but I just feel that there are only 10%, which in every organization, multinational banks have been working. We always had 10% of those, but they were not that vocal in the sense they had different ways of communicating, creating obstacle, white collar politics and all of that. But here you get a lot of noise, but if you focus and focused on doing what you need to do with the sponsorship from the top, as Hava mentioned, and you can be successful. There's no doubt about it. So what I see at National Bank, we have got a lot of talent. But they're in different segments. There's some talented people who have lost interest because they tried to do something and were not successful. So they lost interest, and there's one bucket which has one category. They're following the thing that if you can't beat them, join them. So, they've joined the negative group as well. But I see a lot of talent there. There is a rule there that, always you need to give chance to your existing resources, channelize them, but fill the gaps where there are actual gaps. So in HR, what we've done so far is, of course, the board has directed us to transform HR function, that's how you will be able to transform the whole organization. So what has happened in National Bank, unlike other banks that I've worked for and other big fives, is that HR has been the core function in other banks. Here, what has happened that we've hired a lot of good people, we've hired management trainees from good institutions, we've developed a lot of resources, but we've somehow were not able to utilize their skill set. So we've implemented a model of HR Business Partners Center of Excellence, where there were gaps, we've inducted resources, but majority, 90% of the resources are in-house. And I'm already seeing a lot of improvement and effort, because majority of them, a few of them are online as well as yet, but in this session, what I've seen the difference from where we started and in 11 months, what have they done? They're very motivated because now their actual talent is being utilized, channeled in a proper way. So as long as you have a right plan and you do it and take people along with you, explaining them what we are doing and why we are doing, and then have the design and delivery model, which is workable. Nothing is inevitable. Success can be there. We're quite optimistic about it.
So I would like to add 2 points, because
Sure.
they say that National Bank is a younger brother of State Bank. So being a elder brother, and we are actually 1 year older than you, so because we started in 1948 and you guys started in 1949. We have gone, State Bank has come down from 16,000 to 4,500 people, and with a much more increasing functions. The experience which we have had is that change management, everything is very, very relevant points you have mentioned. But I would like to add that as a management team, we need to prioritize also.
Yes.
Because there are so many things you want to do. And if you start doing everything at a time, it will happen. Same thing what has happened to the present government also. Because you start everything and you cannot finish anything. And the other thing is that don't get bogged down into, the unnecessary, I would say, the noise which is created in the organization. What happens is that these are called energy suckers.
Yes.
If the senior management gets involved in those things, you lose track of the real path, and you get distracted in non-issues. And third important thing is you need to have a suitable reward program also with that also.
Yeah.
Because
yes, sir. I'm sorry. Thank you so much. You're adding so much value, and I guess from National Bank and State Bank perspective, they are typical, very, very good examples of public sector organization, which is they are not driven by profit in that sense. And Asma was making a very interesting point. People question, why do we have to make more money? And that's very interesting. Asma, I'd like to respond to it, but not today. Maybe we need to do understanding of people. People say that we are making a lot of money, but there's a lot of money that we could have made is not being made. So that is another thing. And there are 2-3 things happening here. One, I think because of this power thing, my laptop is also about to give up. But anyway, we'll see how long it continues. The other thing is that I would like to take some questions. So we are already at by the way 5:40 or something. Hello. Yeah. So let's continue this, and I would like to ask the forum to ask any questions. I'm so sorry. This is such a rare program, and it has been marked by the public sector inefficiency of our Karachi Electric, which is now private.
Sir, allow me to have a first question.
Please, sir, go ahead. But please.
I have 2 questions actually, which I would.
I think Shahzaza, we are a little constrained by time, so very quickly just focus on the question. Just throw the question, no comments.
I'm going to throw the question, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. One is about the leadership. As we see, there are gaps in private sector, and if we are talking about public sector organization, there is certainly the leadership issues which we can face. And I would like to know the contribution of that in terms of our transformations space. On the other side, there are also lack of understanding of customer. So being a customer-centric organization, how private sector or public sector organizations are evolving compared to private sector. So that is the briefly question. I hope.
Thank you.
I'm clear.
Thank you, Shehzad Saab. Thank you for keeping it crisp. Anybody would like to answer? Hawa, aap batayenge? Sorry.
Yeah,
Would you
so
like
I think for me, firstly, it's about, if I have to tackle two areas, one is the leadership and then of course the customer centric. So if you look at from a leadership perspective, Mr. Shehzad, I do believe that there isn't enough ownership to transfer that vision of what is transpired from the public sector right down to its people. For example, research shows, and also through a lot of the training and development that we've been involved in, that there are 5 key areas of skills that are lacking in leadership area to be able to transfer down. One is giving feedback. A lot of the information is being held at the top instead of it being transmitted down. And I think, Asma, you've mentioned that in your bank, you've been trying to relocalize the entire HR to be able to get more information and more communication. And I think that's one frustration that is actually getting delivered to the customer. Because there isn't enough feedback, we're not enough focused in terms of the customer. The other is motivating employees to be able to get into action. That part is also seem to be missing a lot, and we need to look at how do we focus on that, where we support them in terms of coaching and mentoring. So for me, those are areas that if we get it right as leadership on the top, then the customer actually will not suffer, and we will become more customer centric, because that person that's meeting up with the customer on the front end is not going to be as frustrated and as angry than if they got more information, if they were more motivated, if they got the right coaching and mentoring. But it does come from the top down. Seem to have lost Brother Zafar again. So perhaps Asma, if you would like to take over from the next on that question, or shall we take?
No, thank you
there
so
we
much.
go.
Yeah,
We have him.
This time from my mobile. But you know, I love my panelists. You know, they don't let people feel my absence. Thank you so much. No, but I actually wanted to. There are some very nice, very seriously interested participants here, and as I said, we do have a limitation of time. But I would like anybody else who would like to ask a question.
May I add something? What my colleague has said.
Gigi.
I think amongst the leadership thing, there has to be a visibility of the leadership also, because if
visibility of
the leadership, when you are transforming the organization, the
leadership by example.
Leaders should be clearly visible in the organization also.
Very
Like
good.
There are various ways. One is that accessibility of leadership also, like if and communication, regular communication with the employees, especially.
Very nice.
This will create a belief
actually, communication
in the leader
is
also.
the key thing. Communication, reaching out, feeling the presence of leadership. These are core challenges.
And the other things, other important point is that leadership should also be willing to correct if they have made a mistake. Instead of, there is a system of a feedback, and you should be willing to, correct yourself also.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you care, if I'm the person who knows at all everything, then people would say, okay, he's a boss, let him pass. We'll come back to our own routine later on.
Okay, I would like to add a point here to the panel. When we talk about transformation of employees, and when we talk about changing and enhancing their competencies and skills, do we have, in a state bank or national bank, a professional capability to find out, assess who are the people who have what strengths and what are the capabilities and how to exploit them?
I think, sir, in every organization, according to my experience, I've worked for 20 years in State Bank also. At a certain level, people, about the people who is in the organization, who will, carry the things forward. And one indication of that is when you make management committees, and the people you put in those committees, you would find certain common names in every committee, because the senior management, the senior leadership believes that, okay, if we put that person in that committee or in that,
But there is
group,
no I mean, like now the world has a lot of highly developed, based linked to the big data kind of capability, where we put our people through some kind of a professional assessment center, and you come up with another something that you can do for every employee. So it be that senior employee, or even as I was saying, our focus on junior employees perhaps can be better, because then we get a good understanding of their capability and really help them develop from whatever position they can develop. If they are clerical, they can develop into officers and whatever. So that kind of capability I'm talking about. Asma, do you have something in National Bank?
We have an amazing infrastructure at National Bank. We have 6 staff colleges. And I would like to just sum it up in a way that we have the ingredients. We have a great recipe. We just need to start baking it.
Wow.
And in terms of, if I can,
everybody is ready for that cake. Start baking it.
We have, as I said, we have the potential. We have our people who are talented. We just need to give some direction. We know once you revive that, I've seen that, I've experienced that. They know how to do it. We just need to direct them and connect all the dots.
That's a good observation.
So he's ready for baking.
That's a good observation. However, you were saying something?
Yeah, if I can add, when you talk about that you have the ingredients, you have everything, the one thing that we need to focus on is the environment that allows them to be able to be baked. Because that is the key factor. And when I think, Brother Zafar, you mentioned about assessments, when we're looking at assessments, we shouldn't just be looking at knowledge and skill in terms of capabilities to actually do the actual job. I think we should take it one step further to look at whether the environment is able to support those capabilities, number one, because no matter how much of raising agent you're going to put into that cake, if the environment is not there to support it, that cake is never going to rise. So you're going to have a cake, but it might not be to the actual wanted. Looking at the environment and measuring organizational health, and I think that's where the leadership actually comes in, is taking it one step further. Measuring how healthy your organization is in terms of expectation levels, in terms of frustration, self-management, job satisfaction, overall satisfaction. Looking at, for example, the focus of control. Are people taking responsibility for wanting to be baked? Because one thing is to put them in the oven, but there are so many people that are wanting to jump out of that oven because the oven is not supporting what they actually want in life. And for me, that's the big thing that we should look at from top senior management down, because again, that allows us to then focus on our customer. The more happier, and it's very different in terms of happiness index compared to engagement index. If we can get engagement from our staff, that will ripple down to the customers, whether you're in the private sector or whether you're in the public sector. And that's one area I personally have experienced that we're missing in the public sector.
Yeah. I would just like to add one thing. If I have, hello. Okay. Hawa, I totally agree with you, and Amjad, suggested me about being focused. Absolutely, 100% spot on. How I can define the transformation of an organization as amazing and as challenging as National Bank is that it's not a 100-meter sprint. It's a marathon.
Yes. Absolutely.
It's not as brief as 100-meter sprint, which is an explosive event where you just aim to win the race.
Yes.
No, it's a very, I would say, prolonged, high intensity, endurance event like marathon. And you need to be focused, and you need to have a lot of stamina for it.
Absolutely. And if I can add that, if I can just...
Great example, Asma. Yeah. It's a marathon. And I'm saying, I'm combining 2 races here. It's a marathon with hurdles.
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if I can look at, I mean, one of the experiences I've had with the public sector, we were involved in looking at the engagement of the staff. We were looking at organizational health, and that took almost, and we haven't even completed yet. We are busy with the cycle now for the last 18 months, because when you look at organizational health, we need to start to look at it as being a strategic priority in the organization. It has to be made a strategic priority. It's not one of those things that we're going to do where we're now just going to be able to go through transformation, take it, file it away in file 13. It's a continuous process. And I think Mr. Amjad has actually said that, is how continuous are we going to make this? It doesn't happen overnight. If I look at some of the organizations, it's taken us almost sometimes 2.5 years to go through the process where we have the vision that is shared between the staff, the employees, and the senior management. And it can take even longer, but it's perseverance, it's commitment, it's continuous measurement, and it is continuous realignment to our vision and our strategy. So you're absolutely right.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions from the participants? Zafar, you're on mute.
Hawa, I would like to say something.
Sorry. Yeah.
Hawa very beautifully explained everything. I just need to know what would be, actually, I heard your last session on the employee well-being as well. So what would be the strategy to create, other than communication, how to create a level of trust in an organization? Would you please comment on it?
Absolutely. So if you're looking at, firstly, it's like we said, Peter Drucker says that you cannot manage what you have not measured. So the first thing is we need to look and measure to see how people actually feel in terms of the expectation levels in the organization, what they need to do. And once we've actually measured that, then it is engaging them to be able to make that change. If I look at the last public sector that we've actually done, that actually took us the last 18 months, we're now at a stage of, after having passed through going on one-on-one sessions, and I talk about sessions, we're talking about actual coaching sessions, one-on-one with staff, then taking those same groups of people and putting them with their managers and senior managers in one level, and actually thrashing out how can we change the environment to suit the needs of the organization. So it's putting out, actually matching what the person and individual needs, what the team needs, and then in line with what the organization can actually offer them. So it's about, it's not just the communication, but it's the mannerism in which leadership is taking responsibility for some of those issues and problems, and not just saying, oh, well, let's pass it down and let's train them. Training is not a pearl. We're not talking about training. We're talking about actual mentoring and coaching on actual problems that is in the organization. And it's facing up to it. It's being the big boy or the big girl and say, hang on, we have an issue. We're not Pollyanna walking around the garden saying, hang on, we got no weeds. And in actual fact, we know that every garden has weeds. So as individuals, what we need to do is sit down and say, let's look at those weeds and how do we turn those weeds into proper plants and flowers within the organization, as opposed to looking at individuals. My biggest problem in organizations, not just public and private, but it's about how do we actually look at what we wanting to do is change the individual. Instead, we need to turn leadership around and say, how do we change the environment to support the individual? Because that individual comes in with all the capabilities. What are we doing to support them? Because like you said, it's not one size fits all. We need to be able to do certain motivation for some staff and different motivation for other staff. It's about looking at their driving dynamics, what drives them into action and allow them to function in that environment. Asma, I hope that answers.
Thank you so much, Hawa. I'll be poking in and out, right? Very, very, very well answered. I think, you know, you again, in your answer, you have created a lot of food for thought for us, you know, identifying, and very good simile of, you know, taking weeds and you just throw them out, or rather than convert. And I believe I'm more in line with you. Nobody is a weed. They're all human beings. They're all resources and they can be better utilized. And I think it as a leadership, and especially as the human resource leadership, it's our ownership. If we can turn it into a beautiful garden, or we can, you know, just
discard them and have a long-term loss in the organization. Brilliant. Now, any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? I can see Yusuf was making a lot of chat points, but on my mobile phone, I can't read it. So, Yusuf, what was it?
Basically, I was just saying that leadership needs to move from an egocentric approach, and they should shift more towards customer centricity.
Oh my God, you're opening a totally new dimension to the discussion. That leadership and ego. Oh.
Listen, I've been in the state-owned entity as well, and been exposed to executive committees, steering committees, etc. I find it extremely challenging with regards to the dynamic that's entrenched in the public sector as well.
Yeah.
Yusuf, I've worked in global companies like American Express and Exxon, and I've seen working near New York, their headquarters. This challenge is not only of SOEs or public sector. The egos get much bigger when you go to the bigger companies, and you will be amazed if sometime I share with you the stories of the real big wigs, you know, how important it becomes for them. You know, what size of corporate jet do you have? Which Cessna model? Those are the things they start managing. And I keep asking myself, they're so well accomplished people. Why do they have to worry about it? But that, I guess, is a human thing. But thank you very much. I think it's a good point. I think ego is a major change. And you know what? The two organizations that you have right now, one, of course, is State Bank itself. They are very well accomplished people. But even now, I mean, I don't expect, I'm just up to answer this. But I can tell you that that issue will be there because it's a human issue. And even National Bank, you know, now we have very accomplished leadership. But again, you know, this is something, in fact, very interesting. You know, I think maybe next week or something, somebody had asked me to get people to talk about upward management, a key to success. And, you know, this is all about it, understanding what your boss wants and then aligning your approach to the boss to make yourself successful. And it may not be the best of the approaches, but that's something very interesting we are doing. And I think, you know, I would like you to again, hopefully you are now a regular member. So thank you for making that point. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Asma, you have anything to add?
No, I'm fine with this.
I have a question for Ms. Asma.
Yes.
Ms. Asma, you mentioned that in your organization, you are trying to transform HR function, and that probably, according to the thoughts you have at leadership level, you think the rest of the organization will follow that transformation. So do you think is this a right approach of only targeting or only focusing on one function before and then cascading it to the other functions?
You know, I think maybe I was not able to clearly mention that. It's just that the focus is definitely one of the focus areas is human resources, because when an organization is, you know, of a size of 15,000 plus employees, so automatically HR becomes a very, very integral part of the overall piece of the organization. It's if I say it's a nucleus, so, you know, it just everything cuts across, you know, this, you know, important function. So the only reason the board felt that, okay, we need to transform, you know, this organization through HR is that this was one area which was neglected for quite a few years. And if I compare the human resource function, when, you know, of National Bank, it was pretty much admin nature. Though we had experienced people, but overall function that they were following was administrative. Whereas any other local bank, forget about multinational, even local banks are way ahead of all the practices. And as a result, there's a lot of employee grievances. A lot of employees have taken National Bank to courts. And that is a very big sign of employee demotivation and not being heard. So when you are into litigation with the employers, and employees are very active, like we have about 10,000 cases like that. So, you know, the whole of all your energy is gone into administrative functions. You don't build the organization as it is required for this size of the organization. So having said that, there's like digital technology, which is being focused as well. You know, we're moving towards digital banking. We have international businesses which are like being focused for the bank. Then we have a risk function, compliance function. So all these control functions, because revenue has never been an issue for National Bank. But these control functions, basically, if we call them control functions, have been like at a weaker side. And you see, when I started hiring people or reorganizing my team, so the first point of objection was, why is HR hiring 3-4 people? I mean, why are they doing it? What about others? I said, if I hire and reorganize my existing resources in a proper way, then only I'll be able to help you out with your transformation. So I need to have my house in order first to help everybody else. So it's not that only HR, but HR is now considered as a very integral part because of the very obvious need, because people need to be.
I think people understand it now. I think leadership understands, and I think this education about HR's role, Asma, from a pure transactional administrative role, maintaining personnel file and leave record, it is way behind us now. People do understand that HR has a different kind of value to create. It's just that our own HR leadership does not strongly believe and preach for that. I mean, I keep on telling people that why doesn't HR proactively come and play its role? So in some places I realize that we are comfortable. Why do we take a panga? Just take your salary, chill and enjoy. And this is something which is a very mission, a passionate mission. When you do it, you have to involve not as an employee, but as a totally emotionally committed, member of the team. You have to have your passion there to do things. You have to enjoy making that change, and you have to enjoy making that. Thank you so much. Amjad Saab. Sir. Amjad Saab. Amjad Saab. I just wanted to acknowledge Amjad Saab.
Amjad Saab is not with us.
Amjad Saab is not with us. Okay. Hawa, any concluding point? Thank you. You made some brilliant observations, and I think there has been a lot of learning. And I hope this recording, we need to listen again and capture and try and consolidate learning at one place. So hopefully we'll do that. But any concluding points from you?
Inshallah, yeah, I think there's just two things for me. If I can just pick up from where Asma spoke about earlier with regards to HR. For me, I look at it slightly differently. And there's no right, there's no wrong. But when I go into an organization for transformation, one of the first things in terms of my criteria is that we do start from the top down. Because what happens is HR normally is misunderstood to be the driving force in terms of the decision making. And I know as being directors, as being a director of one of the largest banks of South Africa as well, at some time in my life, and I won't give away my age right now, but I worked in a bank for almost 10 years in the private sector. And in that particular industry, when I was a director, one of the things that people looked up to us was to make the change. But what we didn't realize was that the change needs to come from the top down. So being a director on the C-suite, when I go in for transformation, I have to start in the C-suite. It's starting with the top person right on the top, right down. So when even we do engagement levels, that CEO's number and figure, whether he is sitting at the back of the boat where he's completely disengaged, or he's sitting in the front of the boat, has to be shown with every other staff member in that organization. Because if we don't do that, we will not be able to get emotional resilience in terms of the entire organization. So as much as I say we start with HR,
the respect that you need to command. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So and plus even people, if you're not coming from the C-suite, they treat you differently.
Absolutely. So the change and resilience has to start on right from the top. Then, yes, your next sector would be going into the HR factor and then moving down. But again, there's no right, there's no wrong. It depends on who's in the driving seat. And if HR is in the driving seat, then fantastic, be on top, but make sure that we're getting that support from the C-suite right from the top. And my last points on this is that when we want to improve on leadership, I believe that to stretch the leadership, we need to breathe this journey. As leadership, we need to breathe it. It needs to be actively involved within the actual journey of transformation. We need to stretch that capacity for strategic planning, stretch the capacity for emotional resilience in the organization, and most importantly, learn how to communicate to inspire people in terms of our leadership. Because it's not just about communication, it's not just about giving feedback, but learning to be able to give that communication with an inspiration to the rest of our people that can then become customer-centric. And if I can end off on those particular points. So 3 things: stretching the capacity for strategic planning, stretching our capacity for emotional resilience, and of course, most importantly, stretching the capacity to communicate with an inspiring perspective to inspire our people through leadership. Zafar, we're not used to you being on mute.
Yeah, that's strange.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Okay. I was just saying thank you so much to Hawa from all the way from Dubai and South Africa, wherever you are. Thank you, Asma from Karachi. And of course, Amjad Saab, I don't know whether he's there or not. I really wanted to thank each one of you. You've done such a wonderful job. You have provoked so much of thinking, if people available, and alhamdulillah, I feel very happy, a little disturbed today, disoriented because of this Karachi electric and generator defeating me at the right time. So hopefully, inshallah, we will have more learning interaction. It was a tremendous evening from learning point of view, and all the credit to the panelists who brought so much of knowledge and depth of understanding of the challenge. And I'm sure, inshallah, we going forward, we will build on it. There are a lot of other things. I want to thank you and staying very exciting session. I just want to let you know that Accelerate Learning Forum is actually enjoying itself now, doing these learning programs. It started off during the COVID period just to stay connected. Then we found this niche of having this Zoom talk sessions and webinars. And then we realized this is not only a lot of contribution to learning, it's a lot of fun. And I would like everybody to stay tuned with us. We are on LinkedIn, by the way. This whole thing will be, the summary of this will be put on LinkedIn. There will also be a recording of this, which I'm sure Mr. Fawad, my colleague, will let you know. And all those who have registered will have a copy of the linkage. We keep on our next program. Now, you see, this is the first time we have done, first time I'm also using this platform to do some training, full day training program. Last 2 weeks, I've done top leadership, achieving leadership excellence program for ACCP, 2 days programs, 2 sessions. And I realized and I learned that it is so effective doing training programs using the breakout rooms and everything. I'll be doing 2 programs next week for a large bank again. I'm not naming. But Friday, I'm trying to set up a 1-day program. This is just a 1-day program on art of negotiation. It's a very, very nominal fee, but hopefully, inshallah, it will be interesting. So the brochures and all you can see on my LinkedIn, and my team will be happy to share if anybody is interested. And please stay connected, and just when we are finishing, alhamdulillah, I've got my electricity back. Thank you all. Stay blessed, stay away from Corona, and enjoy life. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, panelists.
Nice to see you, Asma. Inshallah, we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, sure, Hawa. Nice to see you. Nice to see you, Asma, too. Bye-bye.
All right, then.
I'm wondering if Amjad Saab is available or not.
Sir, he's not available.
Amjad Saab is still not available.
Yes, sir.
Is Jahangir there? Jahangir Saab, are you there?
No, sir. Jahangir Saab is also not here.
Okay, so State Bank has run away, right?
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Zafar.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Asma. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hawa.
Thank you, Mr. Fawad. Bye-bye.
बहुत शुक्रिया जनाब. Fawad, I hope you have the. I couldn't read the.
Yes, I have the record.
Usmani Sahib, it was wonderful to.
Sir,
it was really wonderful. It was
thank you so
very
much.
initiative.
Thank you.
Very good
it
initiative.
Was a pleasure.
And
I'm
thank you,
glad
Hava.
that you were
This is the first time I like your point of view and very open discussions for everybody.